What happens when you take an 18-team fantasy draft of the best baseball players of all time and put them into MLB The Show in an ultra-competitive fantasy showdown? It's the Legends League!
Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Legends League podcast. I'm Spencer Silva, your kinda sorta host and the general manager of the fake Oakland Athletics.
And I'm your Legends League commissioner, Bobby Ray.
And we've got a great show for you today. We'll update you on the happenings of the third week of Legends League action. And we'll look at standings, the week's winners and losers.
And then later we'll have a special guest on, the manager of the Mariners, Lou, and I'll ask Lou and Spencer about their featured matchup that we had in this past week between the A's and the Mariners. And at the end, leave you with a tip from me, your commissioner.
Round the horn.
Awesome. Let's get into it, Bobby. Will you tell me about the standings?
Absolutely. So we had a lot of shakeups in the league this week. The first episode, we were talking about how much dominance there had been by these cupcakes, which there's been a lot of discussion. And we need to stop calling these teams cupcakes because we've got the Rangers are leading the AL West right now. So maybe we should just call them the commissioners teams because I'm actually controlling all 12 of those and making lineup edits and adding and dropping players on a weekly basis. So they're a legit threat at this point. But this week was really characterized by big shakeups in the standings. We saw the Tampa Bay Rays recovering in a big way, and now they're only trailing the Yankees by 1 game in the AL East. But that whole division is just really, really close. Have a look here. The entire division is only separated by a game and a half in the standings. So the AL East is proving to be the division of death. The White Sox and the Indians are absolutely charging behind the dominant Tigers, whose record is still up there at 19-6. But the White Sox, as they've reminded us plenty in the group Discord, they have rallied above 500 to a record of 15-12 now. And the Indians might actually be the hottest team in the Legends League. They've recovered to a record of 12-16 after a really rough start. The AL West, why don't you tell us about the West, Spencer, your own division?
The West is extremely tight. The Rangers are in first, as you mentioned, one of several cupcakes that are still leading their divisions, even though we are nearly a month into the sim season.
Yeah.
But right now it's packed very tightly. The Rangers are 15-10. The Mariners are 15-13. The Athletics, my team, are 14-13. And the Angels are 13-13. But the Astros only a few games back. There's less than 5 games that separate the entire division from one another. So it's looking to be a tight one through all the way through.
That's incredible. Then we saw the NL East also have some crazy flip-flopping. The Nationals leapt frog? Sure, we'll stick with that. Both the Phillies and the Braves who got off to great starts, but all of a sudden here are the Nats at 15-10 and in first place with a half-game lead on the Phils and a game-and-a-half lead on the Braves. Though the Braves have had some really tough competition recently playing against some of the other hottest teams in the Legends League. So it could be that they've just had a tough strength of schedule. And there we've actually got the Mets and the Marlins both occupying the cellar at or below 500 in their record. The NL Central is really the least changed of all the divisions. The Brewers have finally recovered a little bit. They're up to 10-16 for third place in their division. But now we have the Cardinals and the Pirates tied at the top of that division at 18-8. And the two commissioners teams, the Reds and the Cubs, only picking up 8 wins apiece in the cellar. And then the NL West, my other division of death, is just another bunch of turnover. Last week when we were talking, the Diamondbacks were actually leading this division, but the Padres have gone on a tear. They're now at 18-6. Your pick to win the NL West, Spencer. And the Giants have been rallying. They're at 15-11. The Dodgers are right there at 500 at 13-13. And then I can't figure out what's going on with the Rockies. I thought that they were going to be a pretty challenging team, but they're sitting at 3-22.
Wow. That's awful.
Yeah.
And moving on, let's talk about what are big surprises. What are your surprises so far of the season?
Well, the biggest surprise, I guess, is the Rockies. As we're going to talk about a little bit later here, regression is a thing that happens very frequently in baseball. Baseball is a very streaky sport, but since it's such a long season, 162 games, things tend to even out in this sport. So I guess my biggest surprise is after approaching a really solid sample of a full month of baseball is that, yeah, we have the Colorado Rockies with only 3 wins and 22 losses. That's something that you really don't even see in real baseball. Can you remember a team starting off that badly, even in real life?
Well, especially not one with Charlie Blackmon, Andres Galarraga, Trevor Story, and a bunch of other legit bats. It seems like they're maybe it's their rotation, but that I've taken a peek at that lineup, and it is looking pretty silly for a fake baseball team.
Yeah, they're dead last in MLB in runs scored with only 80 runs scored on the season, whereas like the Padres have put up 136 runs. Like you said, their pitching is awful. They've allowed 140, but I just cannot explain how they've only put up 80 runs. They're supposed to have the 19th best power lineup in the whole league and the 21st best contact lineup. So by the in-game ratings from MLB The Show, they're supposed to be actually hitting the ball with some authority and just absolutely flummoxing me so far.
Interesting.
And then on the other side of the ball, you have 4 teams that are really still crushing it with their win records. Like we mentioned, the Tigers still at 19-6, the Cardinals and the Pirates at 18-7, or are they both at 18-8 now? I think they're both at 18-8. And the Padres at 18-6. I mean, those teams are still way outperforming, and I think regression is coming for all of them, but I guess we can still be surprised.
And we will get to that more later. One of the trends that I've noticed, and it looks like you've noticed it as well, is that it seems like for the most part, except for these outliers, the teams are in general marching towards about roughly a 500 average.
Yep.
And it seems like the teams like the Indians, who are great, but got off to a slow start. They're hard charging right now. Same with the White Sox, and maybe we fueled them a little bit when we were just heaping praise on our last podcast about the Tigers, but
that's right.
Maybe that's coming to an end.
It looks like karma. We might have earned it.
Yeah, exactly. So is there anything you wanted to talk about before we get to our next segment?
Yeah, just a couple of these kind of bigger trends looking back at the week in review. The word of the day kind of is regression. Some of these guys that just started off to just insanely hot starts, like Mickey Mantle and Frank Thomas, they're still doing well, but they're coming back down to earth. I think Frank is only on pace for like 85 home runs now, rather than pushing 100. So there's some regression for you. I do find it interesting that there are still 17 hitters league-wide that are OPSing 1,000 or higher. There are 8 in the NL and 9 in the AL. And what I find really surprising about this is that 4 of those are Tigers and 3 of them are Indians.
Wow.
Which is
how many of them are cupcakes?
2, I think. I think we've got Max Carey from the Red Sox and scanning
Walker Cooper.
And Walker Cooper from the Marlins.
Who I've never heard of, and I haven't deigned to look up so far.
Exactly. And then one more just big observation from the past week is that while we've seen a lot of these hitters start to regress, what we haven't seen yet is these really early ace performances regressing back to any kind of mean. And I think that that's because even the innings pitched leaders are still only around 40 innings. So for even the starting pitchers who, are at the top of the rotation and have the most innings pitched so far, we're still not at a super reliable sample size for them. So we've still got some guys with whips under 1. We've still got some guys like John Lester who are looking like they're going to have a sub-2 ERA by the end of the year. But I think that those are more surprises than they are anything that we should lean into at this point in the season.
And that is a great transition, because our next segment is going to be called Legends and Losers.
Legends and Losers.
In this segment, we are going to look at who is living up to their legend billing and who absolutely is not. And so, Bobby, you want to kick us off with the guy that you just mentioned and talk about what he did this past week?
Absolutely. John Lester is pitching like he's Satchel Paige or something. In his last 2 starts, he's pitched a combined 18 innings pitched of shutout baseball with only 2 walks, 2 hits, and 18 strikeouts. The first one was actually a no-hitter with only 1 walk allowed, and the second game was another complete game shutout.
Unbelievable. And we'll see what happens with that, but John Lester, FYI, is a 5th starter on the Rays, who have a stacked rotation to begin with. And I think he's only a 92, 91 for
something
overall.
Like that. Yeah, I don't have it off the top of my head, but he certainly wasn't, sought after in the draft.
He was one of the last picks for the Rays, I believe.
Wow.
Congratulations, Rays.
Yep.
Rob. Yeah. And then moving on, tell us, it looks like the Giants rotation is fitting its legendary billing so far.
Seriously. So the Giants rotation features Clayton Kershaw, Juan Marichal, Garrett Cole, Mike Scott, and Catfish Hunter, the last of which is actually occupying their ace slot, trying to get a little bit more performance out of him by giving him an ego boost. But over the last games, there hasn't been a single loss from their starting rotation. I think Josh Hader was responsible for 2 losses over that span. But over those last 11 games, which is basically since our last podcast, that rotation has produced 5 complete game shutouts. Just
Holy
gnarly.
moly. That's crazy. And then our last legend pitcher of the week is Tim Lincecum, who in his last outing had 12 Ks through 8 1/3 innings pitched. And he is another pitcher who was taken quite early despite a lower overall that is performing well when moved to that ace slot, which I'm going to say is a strategy that yours truly pioneered. And it seems like some of the other managers are picking up on.
You definitely did. Yeah, Lincecum has put up 33 innings on the year. His ERA is sitting at a nice 2.18, and his WHIP is a 1.33, which seems to be pretty typical Lincecum.
Yeah, but he's a 93 overall, and he's dominating. It is typical Lincecum. I love that in his little photo that we're both looking at right now. He's just got an amazing soul patch as well. Just
yep, and
got
just
a little moss
smirk.
hanging out the chin. Yeah, a little smirk, which is apropos. He looks a little bit like the front man for Creed.
Ooh.
In this particular rendering, but he doesn't look like anything like that in real life. So, alas. Anyways, moving on to the hitters. Who was our first legendary hitter of the week?
So the hitting side of the ball, I want to talk first about possibly the hottest Legends League team hitter in the game, which is Willie McCovey. He's on a 4-game home run streak. The last 4 games, he's gone 7 for 18 with 5 home runs and 11 RBIs. His season stats are starting to get ridiculous. He's up there with Frank Thomas in the home run totals. He's got 13 on the season. He's got 26 RBIs. This is all in exactly 100 at bats. His triple slash at the moment is 330, 362, 760.
Wow.
Yeah, possibly the most dangerous left-handed hitter in the Legends League at the moment.
I'm sure this is a shout out to you, Hunter, for not reaching for your boy. Alas. Next, we are looking at Max Carey, who we mentioned earlier, who is one of the 2 cupcake hitters. I got to get in the habit of not calling them cupcakes since they're absolutely dominating us, but I'm going to stick with it for this episode at least. Anyways, Max, boys. Yeah, the commissioner's boys. Max Carey, who is, he's got some nice stats overall, but he's on a 12-game on-base streak, 20 for 46 with 6 walks. And he's slashing, his OBP and slugging are 434, 500, which is
that's average and on base.
Oh, that's average and on base.
Yeah, and a 500 on base over that last 12-game on base streak.
Holy moly! Alas, he's even better than I thought.
So this is one of those guys that I'd never heard of Max Carey before. And he's a guy who got inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1961, was born back in 1890 and signed his first professional contract in 1909. So you read his Hall of Fame profile, and he's got some interesting things. He was a really intelligent base stealer, which is kind of the biggest thing that people talk about him, is he was a really smart baseball player. But then you dig a little bit further and you find out that he was one of the first managers of the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. So if you remember that movie, A League of Their Own.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Max Carey coached the Milwaukee team in 1944. And then after he won a pennant with them that season, he became the president of the AAGPBL and would go on to be one of their biggest advocates for the next, I think, decade or so. He would bring all of his old friends from Major League Baseball out and have them come look at these girls play, and they'd just be blown away by how much talent was out there. And he would go on to say that those years coaching and being an admin for that league were some of his happiest ever in baseball. I just thought that was a really cool story and makes me want to go back and watch League of Their Own again. Yeah,
and not to mention that Tom Hanks's character is based on Jimmy Fox, of course.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah. And actually, it's kind of it's not a super accurate portrayal.
Right.
Because while Jimmy Fox was a legendary drunk, he was also quite a nice guy, which Tom Hanks is not in the movie, or at least he has a little bit of a redemption narrative. But Jimmy Fox didn't need that. He was kind of a quiet, nice guy by all accounts.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then I just wrote down here some more honorable mentions. We've got for the Tigers, JD Martinez and Joey Votto are crushing it. Gabby Hartnett is on fire, one of the hottest catchers in the game, and Mike Trout is finally living up to his billing. And then leading that Indians charge, you've got Josh Gibson and David Wright, who both have the flame next to their name as they're on hot streaks.
Love it. All right, I think it's time for the losers. We got to talk about the losers.
Losers.
Who are our pitcher losers?
So the way I did this is I went through the league leaders to try to look at who are the guys who we expect to be doing well but aren't doing well, and then I would just look for guys who have the snowflake next to the name or the flaming hot Cheeto icon, because that's a really easy way to look at this stuff, because the show doesn't have very good sortable stats. What was really weird about the pitchers is that everybody who has the snowflake next to their name really only had one bad start in the past couple weeks. So like Fernando Valenzuela, he had an outing where he allowed 6 earned over 2 1/3, walked 4, and struck out 2, which is really similar to Andy Messersmith had a similar outing. Josh Beckett allowed 4 2/3, or allowed 6 over 4 2/3. John Smoltz allowed 6 over 5 innings pitched, only struck out 3 and walked 3. But all 4 of those guys, I went back and looked at their previous 2 starts, and they all dominated. So it's really odd how quickly some of these pitchers can go just ice cold just from one bad start.
It's true, and I would have put there were actually some legendary pitchers that maybe do not have the snowflake icon next to their names, but have not living up to the billing. I noticed that old Pete, for example, until his dominant start today, had about a 9 ERA or something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we'll see. It's been really hit or miss, I think, with the legends.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then our losers for the hitters, starting off with one of your own guys who I know that you've been moving around in your lineup a lot, which is Cool Papa Bell. And over his past 7 games that he's played in, which I think is over the past 9 calendar days in game, he's only gone 3 for 29. So I'm wondering what you think about all that.
I'm not too excited about it. I moved him to my leadoff spot because out of nowhere, his role expectations and his contract, how he's feeling about his contract, morphed, and so the game really put that on my back, and so I decided to put him in my leadoff spot, and he has not rewarded me at all. In fact, most of my lineup hasn't been rewarding me of late, so we'll hopefully turn that around. I'm excited for my team that is supposed to have a lot of power to start hitting a couple of dongs, because I saw that we are not anywhere near the top of the leaderboard on that one, so I'm pretty hungry for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Our next losers are a pair of hitters that are actually relied on a lot down in San Francisco, and that's Miguel Cabrera and Manny Machado. So I went and looked at the box scores for the Giants over the past week to figure out why these 2 studs have icicles next to their name, because they're both putting up good numbers on the year. And when you look, each one of these guys has one game where they had like a 3-hit game with a bunch of RBIs and a home run. But if you remove those 2 big games, Miggy and Manny have combined to go 3 for 34 over the past week.
Wow.
Yeah. It hasn't hurt the Giants at all. I think that they're on like a 7-1 streak over the last little while. But yeah, just surprising to see those guys really floundering. Then our next loser comes in, I think, maybe the biggest surprise to me of an underperforming bat, in the name of Jason Giambi, which is, I think he's one of your personal favorites, right?
Oh yeah, he was taken just before I was considering him.
Right. So over the last 10 games, Giambi has gone 8 for 38, which is a .210 average, and only drawn 3 walks, which for a guy with such legendary plate discipline skills, it's really surprising. On the season, his triple slash is 183, 313, so he's drawing his walks, and then he's slugging 301. Just a huge overperformance or underperformance from a guy who's being relied on as the cleanup hitter for Cleveland.
Yeah, and I'm really interested to see a couple of your honorable mentions here, that you have both Barry Bonds and Mickey Mantle, not to mention Joe DiMaggio, 3 first-round picks on there. Why did you put them on your honorable mention list?
Because they all have the snowflake next to their name. Again, that's really the thing that I'm looking at with these legends and losers is who are the guys who have been performing so badly or so well that they're turning those into either hot or cold streaks. And so all these guys have the snowflake right now. The reason I didn't stat them out all the way and look at their whole past week is you take a quick look and it's like, well, okay, yeah, Barry Bonds is scuffling, but still a couple days ago he hit a bomb. Then he hit a bomb 2 days before that. So it's kind of tough to say he's really struggling as much as like a Giambi or a Machado is.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Let's move to which teams, in your opinion, are over and underperforming, Bobby?
Yeah, let's start with the underperformers. There's a lot of metrics that point to the Cleveland Indians really underperforming so far. A lot of their metrics in the back end are looking great, but their team record just isn't living up to that. So their team ERA is horrendously bad. I think it's last in the majors at 5.06 team ERA. Most of the teams are somewhere in the 4s, and a bunch of teams are even still in the 3s. I assume that this rough ERA is from having to face hot lineups like Detroit a lot in the early going. The Indians have just had a gnarly strength of schedule. They haven't had many games against cupcakes. And yet, despite all of that, the Indians are second in the majors in home runs, trailing the Tigers. The Tigers have 49 home runs, and the Indians have 46. I think the rest of the field is really starts somewhere around the mid-30s. There's a couple other teams that are there in the low 40s, high 30s. But yeah, Cleveland and Detroit are just lapping the field in home runs. And Cleveland is tied for third in runs scored with 136. They haven't been caught stealing once all season. So unlike a lot of teams, they're not losing runners on the base paths. They're fourth in walks drawn with 94. And here's where I think a lot of their bad luck comes from. They've grounded into a hilariously high amount of double plays with 26, which I think paces the field by some insane amount. Yeah, most teams are in the teens, and they've grounded into 26 already. So I think that all comes together for a formula for them really turning things around in the record, and we've seen that in the past week.
Yeah, that makes me feel a little better about the sweep that I just suffered by them.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, they absolutely pounded the ball against me, and it was not very fun to look at the box scores.
I'll bet. Yeah, Josh Gibson, David Wright, and Frank Robinson are all on fire for their lineup, and I know that the Indians GM is considering some big shakeups behind the scenes. So we'll see if some lineup maneuvering can really turn that into some wins.
And one other little side note on the Indians, I did know that Frank Robinson has an epic backflip in the game. So he hit an enormous no-doubter home run against me, and he like balanced the bat on home plate and did like a little explosion, which I had never seen before. Yeah,
okay.
It was extraordinarily patronizing, but I loved it.
Oh my god!
Yeah, it's great.
Cool. Backflip game is on par with his sideburns. That's amazing.
Yeah, he went big, and it was great. And who's your overperforming team?
So my overperformer, I've kind of been on this for 2 weeks now, is the Cardinals. And I know that there's a lot of reason to like this Cardinals team, and I'm not even necessarily picking them as an underperformer because of what I think about the roster construction. But really, when I look at, the team-wide numbers, how are they doing in home runs? How are they doing in team average? How are they doing in team ERA? I think that the win-loss record suggests that they might have gone a little bit luckier than most teams in terms of pulling out wins when maybe the performance wasn't there. So the big thing for me for this team is that the Cardinals aren't actually thumping home runs like they were in the early season. They've got 38, which is still near the top of the MLB. We saw that the Tigers had 49, so they're a whole 11 behind the Tigers. And this is a team that started off as one of the hottest home run hitting teams in the league. So that means that the home run numbers are falling off. And when you've got a team with David Ortiz, Mark McGwire, Manny Ramirez, Babe Ruth, you need them to be thumping home runs to be maintaining this level of consistent production. Instead, what they have is their top 3 in batting average for a team that I don't think has any business being a batting average leader. Yeah, there are some guys in here that should hit for great average. Ichiro Suzuki, clearly. I think Manny Ramirez could end up a 300 hitter. But you go much further down the lineup, and outside of Babe Ruth, I don't really expect many of these guys to be over 300 by the season's end. So it's almost this weird mirage where they're winning with the skills that you don't expect them to win with. You add to that a really, really big overperformance by their bullpen. and a defense that has only committed 3 errors all season. Yeah, I just think that there's a lot in there that suggests to me that if luck starts to just balance a different direction, the Cardinals' record could really change without anything changing in the underlying team construction.
So maybe they're a good team to play right now.
Maybe
That's
they're
what
a
you're
good team to
saying.
play right now,
Who
as
knows?
long as Babe Ruth doesn't wake up, because he's been slumbering for the
Yeah.
early going, and if he wakes up, then yeah, you don't want to play the
Then
Cardinals.
yeah, that's not going to be fun. Okay, so for my underperforming team, this is a pretty easy pick. It's the Brewers, top to bottom. They look like a pretty solid team. They have Pujols and Bonds in the middle of their lineup with Knapp, Lejoie, Leinoff, who's a legendary hitter himself, who famously had a feud with Ty Cobb, which is always great. And I just think in general he's got a great team, and he has no business being at the bottom of the standings. And I think looks like he's turning that around a little bit. But Fergie Jenkins is great in this 2 spot in his rotation. Kaneda, the legendary Japanese pitcher, everything under the hood looks great, but he's sporting a 4.34 ERA with a 1.47 WHIP and 37 innings. But he's got 44 strikeouts versus 17 walks, so I think he'll be just fine. Oral Hershiser's great. Maybe he needs some help at the back end of his rotation, but overall he's got an extraordinarily solid team. The Pirates are my team that I feel like is overperforming a little bit.
Gotcha.
And I hate to say it, that I'm going to be a little basic here, and I feel like the main part of my thesis is just that they are the lowest rated, or one of the 2 or 3 lowest rated, along with me, Legends League team according to the game machine. Yeah, and I looked at their team a little bit, and I think their rotation, they have one super ace in Justin Verlander, but after that it's Felix Hernandez, who's a 93, David Cohn's a 95, Madison Bumgarner's a 90, but he's leading the league in pitching right now, and Hippo Vaughn, who's a 91. And so they have been pitching out of their minds, and maybe it has something to do with the ballpark, because what's the I can't remember which bank. PNC is the bank. Yeah, I always get PNC and Citizens Bank Park mixed up. One's the Phillies, one's Pirates. They're in the same state.
They're both P's.
They're in the same state, whatever. But anyways, I don't think Mad Bum's going to keep it up. Frank Thomas is going to hit 100 home runs. But like you, comparing them to the Cardinals, one of their in-division rivals, I think that all of that could be thrown out the window if all of a sudden Joe DiMaggio goes on a 56-game hitting streak or something like that. Because he's ice cold and his stats are off the chart, and so that could very easily happen. Even though it does seem like some of the really, really high contact players are really not producing, and so I don't know if that is. I have no idea whether that is an actual trend or if that's just a mirage after only 4 weeks of stats.
Yeah, it's really, really tough to say at this point, because this is the point where we're starting to see guys get up to that 100 at bat mark, which is where you start to take stats seriously. Absolutely.
Right? And so, just one observation that I had before we move on to the commissioner's tip is I just, in general, I feel like the teams that maybe you want to be playing right now are the ones that, or the teams that started off really hot and are maybe regressing, like maybe the Tigers or the Padres. It might be a good time to play them, whereas playing the Orioles or the Indians or the Brewers could be really bad news. And so that's something that I just wanted to point out, and I don't know if that's going to come to fruition or not, but
yeah. So do you feel like this is a hunch about there being some kind of mechanism in the game design that it, over the course of the season, tends to bring things to that 500 level, like a results first deterministic kind of programming, or what's your thoughts?
No, I just think in general, we're probably all of our teams are clumped pretty closely together in terms of talent. And, I think that there will ultimately be a pretty strong separation between the Legends team and the Cupcakes. Okay. But I do not think there, talent-wise, is an enormous separation between any of our teams. So, like, I imagine if you had the distribution, the 1 through 18 would be all pretty tightly clumped together, and then you would have you'd be skewed way to the right if we were looking at a distribution in terms of the talent, right? Sure. And so I think that those teams that are looking like they are outliers at this point are probably talent-wise closer to the middle of the pack with the rest of us. And so I think that is just going to even itself out, and the only way that that's going to happen is teams are going to lose.
Gotcha. Yeah, I totally see that. Yeah, when you first put this talking point into our show doc, I started thinking about this, and I started thinking about sports video games in general. Again, zooming out to that 30,000 foot view, because I've been playing sports video games for 2 decades now. Going back to Ken Griffey Jr. Presents Major League Baseball on Super Nintendo, which I've been learning the licks from the theme song, which has been absolutely making my fingers bleed. But in a lot of sports game franchise modes in the past, like with NBA 2K and with Madden Football, I've definitely felt that there is some kind of internal AI that is trying to bring in-game performance towards some predetermined result. Whether it is there being some fairness amongst similar teams, we're forcing everybody towards a 500 record. And I'm really hoping that that's not the case. I have no way of knowing whether or not that's the case. But I do think that we saw with your team in the original PFK breaking the all-time wins record by almost 10 games. I do think that if any of these teams are separated by talent, I think that over the course of 162, we will see that separation really play out. But I'm with you that baseball is the great evener over long stretches, and I do think that this pack will come a lot closer.
Right, and I think also one of my theories is as someone who believes that the morale system has quite a bit of influence in all of this. I really I wonder how much Joe Madden being the uber elite coach paired with having a Keston Hiura performance of a guy who had no role expectations becoming a slugger. I wonder how much of that became a positive feedback loop for my team that won't exist because some of those dynamics are missing because you hammered flat some of those variables that that maybe didn't exist in the previous iteration of our PFK sim.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Sure.
I don't know.
I'm crossing my fingers. I got those hammered out. We'll see.
Featured matchup.
All right, we are bringing in Lou, the manager of the Seattle Mariners.
Hello. How are we, guys?
What is up, my dude? How are you doing on this Sunday evening?
Doing well. I was watching the most recent game, saw a 3-0 win by the Seattle Mariners on the back of a 9-inning shutout from Christy Mathewson. So closing out the weekend in a good fashion.
That's great. I was feeling terrible until I saw the little ticker revealed to me that Phil Niekro, Uncle Phil, threw a complete game shutout with
I saw that
with 9 strikeouts, and I've just been feeling horrible all weekend because of getting swept by the Indians. But alas, anyways, Lou, nice to have you here. Let's talk about our featured matchup. Bobby, do you want to explain to us what a featured matchup is and ask Lou and I about it?
Yeah, so we had our first featured matchup of the Legends League season, which was actually being able to watch all of the games of a series. You guys had so much smack talk going into the matchup, and both of you are really engaged, doing lots of lineup maneuvering. So I wanted to reward that by getting all 4 games of your 4-game set right out front and center, putting them all on the stream, and it was every bit as exciting as I hoped it would be. You guys ended up splitting the series 2-2, and yeah, it was riveting, every bit of it. Before I ask you questions about the actual matchups, I wanted to kind of ask you guys about your roster constructions. So Spencer, you were first, and Lou, you were other way around. Lou, you were first, and Spencer, you were last in our 18-team snake draft. So I was wondering how you decided on your first pick from that first round, and how that pick and your draft position ended up shaping your roster strategy for the remainder of the draft.
Well, for me, for the first pick, once I was assigned the Seattle Mariners, my head immediately went to I wanted Ken Griffey Jr. and I wanted Randy Johnson. Hence my Discord name, the Big Lunat, which I kept because it just fit.
Yep.
But when I made the pick, I'm thinking Ken Griffey Jr., amazing Gold Glove outfielder, 600 home runs. He's probably have some. I wasn't even thinking kind of, the contact power versus left-handers. It was just, this is who I want, and I've got the first pick, and I'm just going to go get him. And I just wanted to kind of see that batting stance and that swagger on a consistent basis. So I kind of, once I found out once I found out I was the Mariners and then I found out the first pick, it took me maybe an hour to convince myself that, yeah, I'm going to go with Ken Griffey. And knowing with the first pick in the snake draft of an 18-team draft, I was not going to pick again until pick 37. And so what I did in the second round, I went back-to-back pitchers with Pedro and Christie.
Right.
Mathewson. And I knew I wanted to have two, big arms off the top, and Pedro was one that jumped out, and Christie Mathewson was one that, as pitchers were going, and I saw that really hadn't heard of the guy. And then I saw, all right, 99 plus, let me put in a request to see what these attributes are. And then when Bobby sent me his numbers, I think everything's in the 90s, and it just jumped out. And I was like, all right, I got to take this guy. The screwball threw me off a little bit as the primary pitch, but I saw he could still pump it, 95 or whatever his fastball was, 95, 96. So I was like, all right, he's still got that. He's got that speed in him. So that was kind of, I wanted to get pitching on that second, third round. And then it was, from there, just kind of seeing who was available, see who was going. And what was nice about having the first pick, and the same way from the snake on the way back, just having back-to-back picks. And once I knew who my two guys were, it wasn't like I was going to get one and one was going to get sniped. I knew once I had those two guys. And although it lent itself to some long waits in between, once that back-to-back pick came,
no kidding,
the draft was flying anyway, so it really didn't matter.
True. Yeah, Spencer, what about you? How did you feel being on the opposite side of the draft?
You know what? I was a little disappointed that the old adage that the last shall go first did not end up working out in my instance. Actually, I'm very happy in retrospect with my first two picks, who were Stan Musial and Honus Wagner, who were, two of the greatest players in the history of baseball, and both are top 15 for offensive WAR in the history of baseball. And so I was really thinking going into the draft that I really, at the turn there, just wanted value. And initially I was hoping that Satchel Paige would be there, but he got sniped. I was hoping that maybe Josh Gibson would be there, and then he got sniped.
Right.
I thought Ricky Henderson might be a little premature there. And the pitchers, the great super aces, were gone. But I felt like getting two 99 plus hitters would be just a really strong base to basically, it'd be a great foundation to build my team from. But as it turned out, I kind of regret not taking a pitcher with one of those first two picks, even if it was a guy that was a little below. Because it really, there was a run that I guess I probably couldn't have predicted in the second round, where like the next class of elite starters, Lou being one of the people who grabbed two starters, there was just an enormous run. And then all of a sudden, by my next pick, there were no 99 plus, or maybe one or two of the lesser low strikeout 99 pluses were left for my next pick, for the third and the fourth round.
Tough to have a low strikeout ace.
Yeah. And I wasn't confident that was going to be, that was going to yield results. I was just a little skeptical. I was even a little skeptical of some of the arms like Greg Maddux, who, were off the charts in almost everything except for velocity and strikeouts. And so I kind of just ended up leaning into just trying to build a well-rounded team out of what was there. And I feel like I just got kind of sideswiped a few times, and I kind of was playing it by ear. I went into the draft expecting to be pitcher heavy, and I anticipated that I was going to have a lot of dudes from California, and I ended up with a bunch of boppers who are not from California. So I have no idea how that happened, but that's what happened with my team.
Right. I remember talking to you before the draft, and you were even planning on being a little bit more pitcher heavy than you ended up being. And then you ended the first day without a single pitcher on your roster. And I was just shocked.
Yeah. And it was, I think it was really a result of where I drafted. And so that was just the flow. That's where I thought the value was. But We'll see. Maybe it'll work out for me. Maybe it won't.
Crazy. Yeah, your division is certainly head to head. So on to your big rivalry. So we watched 36 innings of your teams head to head, right? I think I did my math right there.
Glorious.
And I was wondering, did this featured rivalry, being able to watch all those innings of baseball between your teams, did that expose any weaknesses on your roster that you maybe weren't aware of heading into that matchup?
I think for me, it's kind of been what my team has done all season is there was not too many, 4 or 5 hit innings that go around. It was kind of, I get a walk, I get a single, and it's a big fly that's scoring in the runs. It wasn't so many, doubles, singles, triples, or any type of extra base hits. It was either long ball and a walk and get some guys in. But I think in the 2 games I won, definitely were saved by the long ball. I thought my one thing I switched, I did a little experiment with my pitching, and I put Doc Gooden in the ace after he was just doing awful to start the year. I'm going to chalk up the game 2 loss to him in a new position, on 3 days rest. He came back on his second time with the ace and threw a nice, I think a 6 and a third with 1 run. So I think he's going to rebound nicely, but I thought my overall starting pitching, I think Walters was game 1, and then Pedro threw a gem, and then Mathewson was actually pretty solid.
He was, yeah.
The starting pitching was good, and then the 2 wins, I was able to go Chapman, Lee Smith to close each one of those, and each of those guys did it without really any struggle or damage. So I was, a fan of the back end. I think Drysdale was the only other one that came in during one of the wins and actually pitched pretty well. Although I did send in some attribute requests because of the last 2 games that he blew, but that was in that series. But I think as I was looking at my roster and as I'm looking to put together each lineup, my focus was really, or is really, looking at high contact guys and high clutch numbers. I got a lot of guys that are 94 up in clutch and some 90s or high 80s in the contacts. And so at first I was trying to spread those guys around, I was looking into that second leadoff for Acuna a couple times, but he just didn't come through in that bottom spot. But as I put him in the second hole or leadoff, he's been doing a lot better. And so now I've just kind of stacked my lineup with all the high clutch guys towards the top, and I eliminated, now I think I've got 4 platoons going right now at catcher, first, right, and now shortstop with Lindor. Just wasn't getting it done versus righties. So I'm gonna kind of keep a close eye on all these platoons because it's a matter of all these guys, if their morale is gonna take a dump because they're not playing every day, or if they're having that on-field success that kind of builds up the morale that I'm not playing every day, but when I do play, I'm getting on base and I'm contributing. So something I'll be looking at.
Yeah, your one guy with a flame on him right now is Todd Helton. He's on a hot streak, but you got Al Rosen and Dave Winfield both cold as ice for your lineup right now. And it's weird that you're so reliant on the big fly, because a roster with Edgar Martinez and Anthony Rendon and Todd Helton, you'd think that you'd be hitting doubles like crazy.
And I haven't, when I look at the numbers of my roster, I've only got maybe 2. I think I only have 2 guys with power numbers in the 90s.
Wow.
Yeah, Griffey's a 99, 93. And I thought I had another one. Maybe he's the only one.
Well, Billy Williams is playing like he's a 99.
Exactly. And Ken Griffey Sr. has what turned into be a, just a fun way to close out the draft.
I love it.
I got his numbers, and he's a 92, 99 contact guy with a 99 clutch. So he's worked his way into the lineup.
As a true to the Blue Mariners fan for life, I am a big fan of your roster. So, Spence, what did the rivalry reveal about your roster that you weren't prepared for?
Well, kind of to add to what I was saying before, I really didn't feel confident going into those games with Niekro versus Pedro and Bill Foster versus Christy Mathewson, even though those were both ended up being real close games. But I guess one of the things that I didn't anticipate was getting shut down like that. I feel like for having a team full of high contact guys, so kind of opposite to Lou, since I went so batter heavy in the draft and I paid so close attention to the attributes. I have a bunch of dudes who have like elite power and have, plus 90 contact.
Mm-hmm.
And but they're kind of same observation as Lou. I'm extremely reliant on the big fly, and I am, according to the PFK, the show's game engine rankings, I'm supposed to have one of the better power hitting lineups, but I'm like nowhere near the top of the rankings for home runs. So
right,
I'm just kind of vexed. I thought I was investing all of this capital into having a great lineup at the expense of maybe my pitching staff and a little bit my bullpen, and I feel like I'm just kind of middle of the road at everything. So it's kind of freaking me out a little bit. We'll see.
interesting. Well, like you were saying, you might have some wheeling and dealing trades coming in, so I'll be excited to see what.
Yeah, and we'll see. Doing. Maybe, and this is actually one of the things that I think is one of the larger narratives that's unfolding right now is, whether or not we're going to have Lou Gehrig's. One of the things that Bobby looked up for us is, how all of the top 15 greatest hitters of all time are doing and faring in our league so far. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that's shocking is that, well, most of them are kind of hovering around the 900 OPS mark. We have a couple like Lou Gehrig, who has a 557 OPS and one home run,
and
is hitting 100 at bats. So it's
not is he on?
Not a super small sample. He's on the Phillies.
Philly, okay.
Yeah, and then we have Hank Aaron, who's sporting a 777 OPS. One of the things that I'm wondering is, I wonder if how many first round picks are going to end the season with a below 850 OPS. And that I feel like that could happen. We'll see.
I'd take some side action on those. I think that'd be some fun side bets to put down.
Yeah, it's going to be. I think it's going to be really interesting, because I think that is honestly going to determine whether or not some of the teams perform to their capacity or not. It's like, if there are 2 or 3 players in your lineup that you drafted to be studs and they produce almost nothing, or they're producing like someone that you could have gotten in the 12th round, it's gonna be really hard to recover from that.
Yeah.
I'd be curious if those guys are gonna, once they kind of get up to the level that they're at, that they're gonna, end up with those type of numbers and just have a month that is just absolutely out of this world. That
I mean, you're right. You're right. It's only I know it's only the end of April, and how many more Frank Thomas like performances are we going to have in the months to come? Like yep. Lou Gehrig could be next, right? Hit 20 home runs in the next month. We'll see.
Cool. Got a couple more questions for you guys. Next, I was wondering if both of you could point to any standout performances that really carried your team through the rivalry that we saw go down, or any specific guys that really hurt you over that 4-game span.
Somebody who helped me for sure was Acuna Jr. I think in the 4-game series, he had 3 homers. In the 2 games, and especially game 3, which I deemed a must win, he had A's had just tied it up off of a Tony Phillips 2-run shot down the line, and was feeling a little beaten at that point. And then Acuna comes up with a 2-run shot to take the lead, and then we didn't look back at that point. And then I think he did the same in game 4. I think he had another homer to put us up, I think a 3-run shot. And so he came through with the big fly. And then Pedro in the game 3 must win that I was deeming, because if you ask Corey, the manager of the White Sox, and Tony, manager of the Blue Jays, after I started 0-2 in this series, I was pretty much telling them, okay, I just need to beat the rest of the AL West because I can't beat the Oakland. So I need to go, 750 against the rest of the division, because these guys are just destroying me. So Pedro came through with 7 innings and 10 Ks and what was a must win. So that was great. And backup catcher Manny Sanguillen came through with the big fly in one of the games. I think he went 2 for 4 in the last game. So he's earning his platoonship.
Yeah, he was a steal you got pretty late in the draft, right?
Yeah, so he was somebody that I was just, a good backup when Bill Dickey needs day off. But now I'm platooning him just because Dickey was doing so bad. But Dickey's coming around right now. But Manny's playing too well to keep him out. But yeah, those three guys really put it away. I think Rendon had a big 2-run homer in one of the games, but across the series and Pedro's performance, I thought were big.
Yeah.
A lot of homers. Yeah, I think Acuna was definitely the MVP of the series because I think he only had 3 hits in the entire series, and they were all homers. In when the game was within a run of a difference from one another. So it was
or that or strikeout. That's just what he does apparently.
Yep.
Yeah. Like every time. Yeah. He made Uncle Phil just, Uncle Phil's knuckleball. It just floated all the way to, across the bay.
Which kind of gave me
that.
confidence against Uncle Phil because of my high contact numbers. In my back of my mind as that game was starting, I'm like, all right, we've got high contact guys. These guys are going to get up there and hack, and hopefully they can get to them.
Yeah. And for me, the only real big MVP that I had was Stan Musial, who in the first game drove in pretty much all of my runs and was the reason that I won that game. So without him, I would have lost because Bucky was making us look shameful. We were very sad.
Bucky was pulling strikeouts out of nowhere with his 68K per 9 that he's got.
68K per 9, and all my team has 90 plus contact. So that just makes all the sense in the world, right?
That's baseball.
Yeah, that's my team, man.
Who's that left? Foster. Foster just, as a viewer, looks untouchable, especially if you're a lefty. He was just I don't know what
he looks
is. I just have zero confidence when he's on the mound. I was just wanting to get to that, wanting to get to the bullpen. But yeah, Musial in game 1. I thought I had one.
Yeah,
I thought I had that one win.
Griffey, that was the only satisfaction that I got from game 4 was watching Ken Griffey look extremely uncomfortable against Phil Foster.
Exactly, which is like going back to the draft. I love having Griffey, but if we were to do this draft again, I'm probably taking a 99 plus guy because he's my 3-hole hitter with the versus right-handers, but versus lefties, I think I've got him in the 6-hole now.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You guys kind of already answered my last question, which is all about the viewer experience, right? Because one of the coolest things about this Legends League experience and streaming these games is that, I'll get text messages from people like, oh man, I was actually literally sweating or my heart was racing for the whole 8th inning. And so I was wondering if there were any guys that really stood out that every time they were on the mound or they stepped up to the plate, you just start dripping sweat, right?
It was sure Stan Musial. He did it to me in game 1. And so the rest of the 3 games, I'm like, every time he came on, he'd square one up and foul it, or any foul tip, I was like, oh, that's a liner up the middle. I just, based on the angle, I couldn't tell. But Musial was one. Wagner tore, I think in the game 4, I think he kicked it off with a bomb to left. I was like, oh shit, I need to split this series, and here he goes. And for some reason, I don't know if he did anything big. I think he had a late, not meaningless homer, but he Roy Campanella. I feel like every time he came up, he had a guy on second, guy on third, or somebody who had a chance to drive him in. I think the pitching did a good job of not allowing anything through, but he got up there, and every time I felt like he had a chance to do some real damage.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm terrified of Ronald Acuna because he did the same thing to me in the PFK of the show. And his stats are, not even, they're great. I mean, he's fantastic, but I was assuming that when you pulled up the stats, Bob, he was going to be like 90 plus power from both sides, but no.
I don't think he has 90 anything.
Right.
No, he doesn't. But
he's got 90 speed,
but he's a monster.
Yeah, he's 87, 89, 85, 88. So
that's all my questions about the rivalry. Any other general observations?
Just that we'll be doing this. I didn't count how many games we have to go, but I know we've got Series 12 and Series 14 are another.
We got some more coming
another
up.
Series coming up here.
I'm excited to redeem. Because I really do blame you, Lou, for kicking me off on that losing streak to the Indians, and so I don't take very kindly to that. So I think we're I think my guys are going to show up with a lot of #want when they
Yeah.
arrive at Safeco Field for our next series.
We'll be, we'll be back at home feeling good, sleeping in our own beds. So
Yeah, and I'm a half game behind you right now, by the way.
I'm 15-13 is by my last count. Counting.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
14-13, so we're neck and neck.
And the Angels are at 13-13, so this division ain't going anywhere. I love it.
Oh yeah,
Texas is leading it.
Yeah, Texas is still ahead, which is insane. But I play them. I play them and the Astros for the next 2 series, so hopefully I'll beat up on them.
This kicks off a 19 straight AL West games for me.
What?
This Texas game today that I won is 19 straight. I got Texas, Angels, Houston, Oakland, and then I got Detroit. So
Damn.
Ooh.
Oh, I can't wait. Everyone's marking their calendar for Detroit right now.
I got Detroit twice in May. I have
man.
Series 15 and Series 18 are Detroit for me.
Tasty. Well, thanks, Lou. It's been great having you, man. It's great to meet
Absolutely.
you. Great to hear your sweet voice and your sweet
Happy to be
takes.
on.
So have a good night, man.
You as well. Good luck, guys.
See ya.
Later.
So anyways, I think our final segment before we sign off here is going to be Bobby is going to drop some wisdom on us and let us know something that maybe we should think about when we set our lineups for the week tomorrow.
The Commissioner's Tip of the Week.
Yeah, your commissioner tip of the week this week is all about bullpen construction. So I've noticed that a lot of teams are running with a very real-life bullpen setup where you've got a closer, you've got a righty and a lefty in your setup spot, and then you throw the rest of your guys out in middle relief, and then you've probably got one guy that you want mostly for mop-up or emergency start duty in your long relief spot. And I'm here to tell you, you might want to rethink that. Over the course of a month of games, almost a month of games in this simulation, we've seen the guys in that second setup slot get almost no work in any situation. So your primary setup guy and your closer are pretty routinely being trotted out there exclusively when you have a 3-run lead or less in the 7th, 8th, and 9th. And that's it. So the second build setup guy, it's like the AI has no path for them to actually get in the ballgame. So a lot of teams have, maybe their third best bullpen arm just sitting there accumulating maybe 2 innings pitched so far, which is just unacceptable. So instead, what we're seeing is it's the top build middle relief and long relief guys that are getting a lot of the important work in tie games or in situations where you're trailing by just a run or 2. Another thing to keep in mind is that there is no actual way to designate like a lefty specialist or a righty specialist. And to be honest, the new 3-batter minimum in Major League Baseball, which is in this simulation, kind of makes the lefty specialist a moot point anyway. But I've had a couple people text me asking, like, how do I make this one guy actually be a lefty specialist? And I think that the best way for you all to do that is to take, so let's say you've got, I won't even choose a name, just somebody who you want to only pitch against lefties, and you rather he not come in otherwise in a heavy situation. You might want him to be your last middle relief guy, say 3rd or 4th on your middle relief stack, which means he's not going to be prioritized for that 6th inning when you're down by a run. But I do think that the AI has proven that they do take left-handed and right-handed context into account when they're picking which reliever to bring in. So if you've only got one lefty who could be pulled into the situation and he's 4th on your middle relief spot, I think your AI will go ahead and leapfrog everybody to put that lefty in. I can't guarantee this is exactly how it's going to work, but I do think that the underlying message here is be water. Don't expect your AI coach to read your mind, and don't expect this to end up being more like real baseball. Really pay attention to what's gone on so far. You have a month of games of data to see, and yeah, listen to your AI coaches and figure out how you can shake things up to get the pitchers that you want in at the spots that you want.
I love it. That's great. Well, on that note, I think we are ready to sign off for today. Well, it's been a great one, and we'll be back with you next week. See you later.
See you on the field.
Thanks for listening to the Legends League podcast, brought to you by the Playing for Keeps fantasy baseball community. Follow us on Twitter at PFK The Show. Check out our YouTube page for box scores, highlights, and game recaps. And check out all the action streaming live at twitch.tv/PFK The Show.